Good morning or afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining our session today, Driving Efficiency and Speed Through Test Process Maturity. Today, we're sitting down with our partners from Experimentus and industry expert Simon Frankish to talk about how your organization can improve your testing efficiency, accelerate your delivery, and raise quality by combining TMMi frameworks with modern testing tools. By the end of this conversation, you'll walk away with practical insights on how you can remove bottlenecks, strengthen your process, and get more business value out of your QA. Now, we have a lot to cover, so let's jump in to a quick agenda. First, we're going to start with some introductions so you can get to know a little bit more about our guest, Simon Frankish, and his background with Experimentus and in TMMi and the test process improvement. Next, we're going to cover understanding TMMi. So, what is it? Why does it matter? And how can it help your organization to improve your testing processes? Then we'll talk about the benefits of TMMi. We'll include some real world results like higher quality, faster delivery, and more efficient teams. After that, Simon will share guidance on how you can get started. So we'll talk about some practical first steps to begin your TMMi journey. And then we'll wrap up with a little bit of live Q&A. So if you do have any questions at any point throughout today's presentation, please feel free to go ahead and put them into the Q&A box, and we'll address these live at the end of today's session. Now, without further ado, let's jump on into our introductions. So my name is Jamie Motherall. I am a product marketing manager and functional testing expert here at Parasoft. For today, I'm going to be your host, and I'll be helping to guide our discussion with Simon. Again, I am joined by Simon Frankish. Simon is a test process improvement manager at Experimentus, and he's also an accredited TMMi lead assessor. He has over 35 years of experience in software testing and has helped many organizations to transform their testing processes to deliver higher quality and faster results. Now, Simon, maybe you could start by introducing yourself a little bit more, adding a little bit more color to it. Tell us about who you are and your experiences. And then tell us a little bit about Experimentus, too, for the audience who may not be familiar with you guys.
Thanks, Jamie. No problem. So, as Jamie said, Simon Frankish is my name. I'm an accredited TMMi lead assessor, and I lead Experimentus's test process improvement practice. I've worked in testing for over 35 years. I've done practically every job you could name within testing during that period, as you may well imagine. As well as my day job with Experimentus, I'm also the UK and Ireland TMMi local chapter lead, which means I have some responsibility for promoting TMMi within the UK and Ireland. I joined Experimentus about 11 years ago and started using TMMi at that point, although it's existed a little bit longer than that. And I've now been responsible for almost 50 TMMi certification assessments and taken part in many other TMMi assessments. Experimentus as an organization, we are a relatively small niche organization. We specialize on my side in test process improvement consultancy and help organizations to improve the way they carry out their testing from a process perspective. And one of the aspects of that is using TMMi as both a model for making those improvements and as a certification model, if possible, ultimately. We also have a test environment management practice, which is largely why we talk to Parasoft, because they are experts in the test environment management tooling. We find that extremely useful in our day-to-day work with them.
Yep. I think it's since 2016, we've now been partners where we've been working with some of both Experimentus customers and Parasoft customers, specifically on that challenge of test environments. So using our service virtualization tools to help them overcome their challenges. And your expertise on just test strategy, maturity have just been invaluable to those customers. So I think we're going to have a great discussion today where we can inform a lot of our audience a little bit more about the benefits of TMMi and also how tools kind of fit into this equation a little bit. So let's kick off with a little bit of education here. I'd like to talk a little bit about what TMMI is. Simon, do you think you could walk us through it? What is TMMI? What does it stand for? And I understand there's different levels associated to it.
Indeed, TMMi firstly importantly stands for Test Maturity Model Integration. It was founded in 2010, and it's a framework really that is designed to help organizations to improve the way that they approach testing. It has 5 levels of maturity. First one is ad hoc, it's called initial, but at that level your testing is kind of informal and reactive. Levels 2 and 3 introduce a lot more rigor. You have managed planning and strategy, etc., at level 2, and then defined processes at level 3, where your processes are much more standardized, much better documentation is in place, and where possible, everybody follows the same kind of practices. We then get up to measured and optimized at level 4 and 5. At measured, obviously, as it indicates, there's a lot of measurement involved, and you can predict what your testing is going to be like through those measurements. And level 5 is where it gets really interesting. You start talking about continuous improvement, a metrics-driven process refinement, and continual test process optimization. People can work through these levels, and the idea really is to give organizations or test teams a clear roadmap to move from that initial basic reactive testing towards continuous improvement and real business value as they move up those levels.
And this aligns really well to Parasoft's approach, because sometimes we have customers come to us and they'll tell us that they have multiple different problems. And they could, for instance, buy our entire platform and leverage that to fix all of those problems. But it is very challenging to adopt everything all at once, to try to implement so much change at once. So this clear roadmap that's about organically growing your test strategy to reach that level of continuous improvement and real business value aligns really well to the way that Parasoft thinks about our solutions and how we approach solving testing challenges and testing bottlenecks. Now, Simon, I'm curious, why did Experimentus choose TMMi as a value or a vehicle for your test improvement processes?
Yeah, an interesting question. So I think we believe that if you've got a lot of experience in testing, practically everybody can assess your current processes and build an improvement action plan. However, and I've done this a lot myself in the past before I became involved with TMMi, if you're basing an assessment solely on your own knowledge, there's nothing official at the end, and there's no consistency or repeatability to your assessments. I find you get things like your own strengths and your own biases start to come through those assessments. So having a standard model to use is really important. There are other test process improvement models. The reason we chose TMMi is twofold, really. Everything to do with TMMi is publicly available. It's all free on the tmmi.org website. There's a whole list of what the model itself actually is, who are the official service providers like Experimentus, who are accredited lead assessors, and which organizations have been certified up to various maturity levels. And secondly, and this is really important, I think, it's not a proprietary model. So it's independent from any tool vendor or any IT services company. TMMi don't sell services, but they clarify and support test process. And it was formed with the intention of helping people to gain benefits from their test process improvements, such as efficiency and effectiveness, and the certification approach is there if people want to go down that route as well.
So really, it's a very approachable and easily accessible model for folks to start to improve their testing processes. And what Experimentus is really bringing to this is kind of that expertise as far as helping to guide folks through that model, through how they can adopt it and really accelerate their maturity gains.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right. Now, you've worked with many clients, Simon, helping them to both improve their test processes, as you said, attain that certification. What benefits have your clients achieved through applying the TMMI framework?
Yeah, well, I think the quick and easy answer really is there will be clear and measurable benefits from things like cost, quality, and timescales of testing.
Hmm.
People find they save money because test activities become more efficient when you get that consistency and repeatability, and then you get the better product quality, which means there's less defects and failures both before and after the introduction of the new product or service.
Hmm.
Um, the quality of the testing improves, so therefore the quality of the product improves. And obviously that leads to better client satisfaction and customer satisfaction at the end of the day. We think you can do things more quickly because you have got that consistency, you have got that implementation of process, methods, and tools. And an interesting kind of side benefit is that we find that clients that have gone down the TMMi route and introduce that consistency and efficiency and effectiveness are able to hire and retain the best testers better because people realize they're working in an organization where they're learning the best techniques. They
Hmm.
know exactly what they're going to do, and they have a clear view on their career paths as testers in their organization.
Structure is not only empowering for the overall organization, but for the individual tester at the end of the day, too. Very
Absolutely.
cool. Now, that was a very powerful set of benefits, but I do want to get a little bit more granular here, talking about efficiency and speed. One area that contributes heavily to those outcomes is removing test environment bottlenecks and enabling earlier testing. And this is one area where Parasoft has worked with a lot of Experimentus customers using TMMi that are using service virtualization. So are there any examples where optimizing the test environment with service virtualization played a key role in achieving those gains that you mentioned, those benefits that we just went over?
Yeah, we see that a lot when we looked at the TMI structure.
Mm-hmm.
Test environments is actually part of level 2, so it's
Mm-hmm.
considered one of the foundational test process areas. It's an extremely important process area, and when we look at that process area, we really look for how test environments are specified, designed, implemented, and managed. And we'll also look for the use of appropriate tools to improve the efficiency of that process. And that's something that's really important. And then when we're carrying out our assessments, if we can see people using the appropriate tools to help them with their test environments, that's something we'd look upon very favorably.
That makes sense because really it's very hard to take control of your test automation process if you have an unstable test environment or you don't have access to that test environment when you need to. You're sharing that test environment with other teams. You have cross pollution issues, things like that occurring. All of that leads to test environment instabilities that then impact your overall test automation strategy. So definitely makes sense that it's a level 2 implementation. Now, maybe you could educate us a little bit more about how TMMI is applicable in a safe or agile safe context.
It's a question that we get asked quite a lot, actually.
Mhm.
The very short and simple answer is yes, it works in agile,
Mhm.
safe environments. The TMMI model, as I said, was initially created in 2010. A lot of the language in it initially was around sequential and V model lifecycle.
Mm.
However, it
Mhm.
is fully applicable to any software development lifecycle, sequential or iterative. Um, it's not prescriptive. TMMI doesn't tell you exactly how you should satisfy each practice within the model. And what that means is that practices can be implemented in a number of ways depending on the context of the organization being assessed, including their software development lifecycle methodology. So if you think about, as an example, traceability. So one of the things we look for is traceability between what you're testing and the tests that you have designed and are about to execute. So with a
Mhm.
sequential model, you'll be looking at traceability between requirements, specification documents, and tests. And that would be one thing we'd look for. In an agile model, we're going to be talking about the traceability between features, user stories, acceptance criteria, and tests. So the good practice remains the same, but how it's implemented can be done in different ways. And that's absolutely fine within TMMi as long as you satisfy the intent of the model. There's not too much importance on how you do that. The TMMi Foundation themselves are aware of the question, and they've created a document called TMMi in the Agile World a couple of years ago now, I believe. And that's got some really good advice on there on how to use TMMi in an Agile environment. I would think that most of the certifications we do at the moment are some form of Agile development, and we've managed to do those very easily. We look at things like the integration of the best testing practices in their teams. So, for instance, people will use definition of ready and definition of done to clarify the entry and exit criteria for testing. And on the test organization front, they're also defining testing roles for the teams, and also defining, it's not a testing role, but testing activities to team members.
Okay. So it's really a open and flexible enough framework that it can very much support that agile, safe frameworks as well. Let me redo this. Now, as organizations move to agile and safe frameworks, we do see on the test automation side the need for more faster, parallel testing across teams, and that often leads to a lot of environment contention. So in the agile space, for those that are implementing TMMi, does service virtualization have a bigger play to support continuous testing without waiting for dependent systems to be available?
Yeah, absolutely. So the timely availability of appropriate test assets is even more vital in an agile environment. Where we see people using techniques such as service virtualization, we know that's proven to mitigate against the risk of delays due to environment unavailability or that contention that you mentioned. So absolutely, yes.
All right. So even more valuable if you are agile or using that safe framework. Now, what is the link between ISTQB and TMMi? I want a little bit more education here, Simon.
So ISTQB is mainly supporting individual skills. It's a certification scheme for individuals who want to develop their testing careers. It moves through from foundation to higher levels, but it's very much aimed at individuals. TMMi is really more at an organizational or a test or quality team level. Having said that, they are slightly different in that way, but they are aligned. They both use the same vocabulary. So TMMi will promote the use of the ISTQB glossary, for example. So being ISTQB certified as an individual, it's not mandatory. We don't look for that when we do a TMMi assessment on an organization. But if people do have ISTQB certifications, it certainly makes it easier for them to understand the model and for us to talk to them about the things that are in the model.
So a lot of complementary aspects between the two. So let's switch gears here a little bit. We're going to talk about recommendations that you have to help teams get started. So let's start off with, does TMMi recommend the use of any specific testing tools? We have touched on testing tools, but I don't think we've clarified specifically if it recommends specific tools.
So not really is the answer. TMMi is totally tool agnostic. It doesn't require testing tools. It doesn't specify specific testing tools. And that's because, as I said earlier, it's about satisfying the intent of the model, not exactly how you do that. Having said that, if you start an assessment and you start looking at some practices that we look at, things like non-functional testing. So if you think about performance or security testing, it's extremely difficult to see how you could do those without implementing some kind of tool. It's extremely difficult to see sometimes how you could implement test environments at level 2 without some kind of tool. It's important that we just witness appropriate tools being used. Something in test environment management, for example, if you're dealing with multiple cloud environments, you've got complex data to be anonymized. have you got the right tool that can help you do that in a timely way, as we discussed earlier?
Now, while we are on the topic of tooling, as you know, the rise of AI-driven test automation tools, it's reshaping many organizations in the way that they both develop their code and then, of course, their test automation strategies. Now, while we don't have a lot of time to go deep into this topic, can you give your insights into how AI-driven tools fit into TMMI? For instance, at Parasoft, we've introduced to our customers agentic-based capabilities that are all really designed to help teams to create test assets easier, a lot faster through natural language. So, enabling teams, for instance, generate API test cases or virtual services using natural language instead of having to script. And this has made the adoption and scaling of API testing and service virtualization for our customers lot more approachable, specifically for less technical, less mature QA teams. So, how does the ease of use factor that AI offers play into that TMMI model?
Yeah, very, very much. Obviously, AI is a hot topic at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I think we look at it from a process perspective, and I think it's quite clear that AI tools can be used to improve practically any aspect of your test process. Having said that, when we look at things like test policy, test strategy, for example, we're suggesting that you would use AI to augment, not replace, the
Mm-hmm.
human judgment in those areas. Playing to AI's strengths is maybe better, and starting with data-rich areas. So things like defect analysis, things like test reporting, things like test estimation, and things like test environments, where there's a lot of data and there's a lot of numbers to be crunched, is where AI really comes into its own when we look at organizations.
Mm-hmm. And I love what you said there about AI really as an augmenter instead of it being a replacer. That's very much the way that we have approached implementing AI, integrating these capabilities into our platform, and also not removing that human involvement. At the end of the day, AI is new. There's still hallucinations that occur. It is so important that the tester, that human, does not remove themselves away from the testing process. They still need to have that oversight of what the AI is generating to make sure that the quality is there, to make sure that really there is those controls in place. Now, I mentioned previously that we've been working with Experimentus for quite a while, I believe since 2016. Experimentus works with many partners, Parasoft included there. Could you talk a little bit about the advantages of working with tooling vendors who are already familiar with TMMI and, for instance, Experimentus, so the consultant work that you do?
Yeah, I think it's, as I said, we are a consultancy company, really.
Mhm.
We don't do delivery, we don't develop tools, we're not a tool vendor. So when we're talking to clients and we're making recommendations as to ways of improving at a process level, it's really useful for us to have partners who can come in with the right kind of delivery capability and
Mhm.
actually provide that aspect of the process improvement journey to our clients. And that's really what we look for in our partners, people who are able to work with us to help our clients improve the way they do their testing. And we don't do the tool vendor activities, we don't do the delivery activities. That's where our partners, such as Parasoft, are really important to us.
Mhm. It's about bringing together really the two levels of expertise, your expertise at Experimentus in TMMI and how to implement it, how to guide organizations through that maturity process, and then Parasoft's own expertise that we've brought with over 35 years in the industry in test automation, how you can better adopt, better scale, and create a very sustainable, very stable test automation practice that is going to remove a lot of those roadblocks so you can release when and where you want to release. All right, we've got one final question before we turn on over to our wrap up and our live Q&A. So if you don't have questions in the Q&A box yet, please make sure that you start to add those to the Q&A box. You ready for that last question, Simon?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. What advice would you have for anyone that is looking at TMMI as a way to improve their test processes? How can they get started?
So go to tmmi.org, download the model. It's a 220 odd page PDF and get started. Seriously though, that's going to be quite difficult. It depends really on where you're starting from. So what's your initial maturity? If you're just looking at starting test process improvement or just looking at introducing real test activities, use the model as a toolbox. Look at the process areas and pick those ones which you think will give you an immediate added value. If you're at a low maturity level, they're probably going to be some of the foundational ones that we've spoken about. But don't feel you have to do everything. Look at it and pick those ones that are going to give you the best bang for your buck. Once you start to understand what TMMi is adding in terms of value a little bit better, as individuals, you can get a TMMi professional certification, which is training and an examination in the TMMi model. It's the foundational qualification that you can get in TMMi, and that will help you to understand, and you can probably do a better self-assessment of your organization based on that. Experimentus have a free TMMi survey online, which you can use to get a high-level overview of your current maturity, and that might help you to start your journey. It might help you to target where you need to improve. Ultimately, if you get to the point where you really want to take TMMi seriously, you really want to do a lot of process improvement work, perhaps you want to get a certification, get supported by a TMMi service provider. They're listed on the TMMi website. There's a number of them. It won't be free, but it is the best way to ensure you get the best benefits out of TMMi.
And that survey that Simon was just talking about, we've got the QR code right there. Just scan it, take you right to the survey. We'll also do a little bit of follow-ups that you have access to that. Now, we'll start looking through our Q&A, our questions here in just a moment. I did also want to point out, if you'd like to learn a little bit more about what Parasoft does as far as the testing solutions that we offer, what we're doing in the space of AI or for service virtualization, I highly recommend that you go on over to parasoft.com, solutions/AIML. Check out our AI solution page where you can learn a little bit more about how we've implemented AI across our platform, as well as our most recent release where we added agentic AI capabilities to service virtualization. So again, level 2, like Simon was talking about, service virtualization plays a very nice role there, helping teams to gain control over their test environments. In Parasoft, we're adding AI to our capabilities to make it easier for teams to adopt and scale that, easier for them to really stabilize their test environments for test automation. All right, I think we've got a couple questions already coming into the Q&A box. I can see them there. Simon, are you ready to dig into some questions?
Yep, happy to do so.
All right, perfect. Well, let's take a look.